The sound of a clock echoed through the room, but it was not the typical monotonous ticking. It was a deeper sound, almost as if it were pleading for something, or someone. In the dim light of a small improvised laboratory in the attic of an old house, Isadora, a young physicist obsessed with the concept of time, adjusted the final parameters of her creation. A machine that promised to challenge the very laws of reality. 5 more seconds, she murmured to herself, her eyes fixed on a pulsating metallic sphere at the center of the table. The machine, named Chronos, was a chaotic mixture of wires, tubes, and flickering digital panels. A hologram projected above it displayed a simulated timeline, showing both known and unknown historical events. Isadora knew she was about to do something unimaginable, but also dangerous. She had studied time travel theories for years, but now, for the first time, she had the chance to test them in practice. As she adjusted the final controls, a memory invaded her mind. Her father, a kind and wise man, always said, "Time is like a river, Ayasa. You can try to change its course, but you never know where it will take you." He had died when she was just 16, a victim of a car accident that could have been avoided. Since then, Isadora had dedicated her life to exploring the concept of time, seeking answers to questions that seemed impossible to answer. And now, before her, was the opportunity to rewrite that story. But before she could activate the machine, an alarm sounded. A red light flashed insistently on the main panel, accompanied by a cryptic message. Warning: changes to the past may create unpredictable consequences. Isadora hesitated for a moment, her hands hovering over the buttons. Was she ready to face the possible ramifications? Or was it already too late to turn back? The camera slowly zooms in on her eyes, reflecting the pulsating sphere behind her. The screen fades to black, and a voiceover emerges. What if you had the chance to change the past, but at the cost of the present? With her heart pounding, Isadora, now called Izzy Carter for a more accessible international appeal, pressed the final button. The Chronos machine began to vibrate intensely, emitting a high-pitched hum that seemed to tear through the very fabric of space-time. A blinding blue light filled the room, and in the blink of an eye, Izzy felt her body being pulled, as if she were being sucked into an invisible current. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing in the middle of a busy street in her hometown. But something was different. The cars were old models, people wore 90s-style clothing, and a rusty sign indicated the year, 1995. She had done it. She was in the past. But before she could fully process where she was, a familiar voice caught her attention. "Hey, are you okay?" It was a tall man with messy brown hair and thick-framed glasses. He held a clipboard and seemed to be in a hurry. His name was Ethan Brooks, an investigative journalist at the time who was covering a local case about a mysterious car accident that would happen in a few days. Ethan didn't know it, but that accident would change Izzy's life forever. While Izzy tried to get her bearings in the past, Ethan was immersed in his own search for the truth. He had been investigating rumors that the accident involving Izzy's father was not just a tragic twist of fate, but something planned. Disappearing documents, witnesses who mysteriously vanished, and clues leading to a powerful corporation called Novatech Industries suggested that there was something much bigger behind that event. Ethan was known for being relentless but also skeptical. He didn't believe in coincidences and had a peculiar theory. What if time was being manipulated by external forces? What if the accident was part of a larger experiment? This line of thought had put him in direct conflict with Novatech, which had begun monitoring his steps. Ethan didn't know it yet, but his investigation was about to intersect with Izzy's time travel. Izzy realized she needed to find her father before the accident happened. Using the information Ethan had gathered in his investigation, she discovered that he would be at a nearby cafe that afternoon. When she arrived there, she found her father, Thomas Carter, exactly as she remembered him, smiling, kind, and full of stories to tell. But something was strange. He seemed different, more worried than usual. "You're the girl who called me earlier, right?" Thomas asked, surprised to see her. Izzy was confused. She hadn't made any calls. Then she realized that Ethan had used Thomas's number during his investigation, leaving anonymous messages to warn him of the imminent danger. As Izzy spoke with her father, she began to notice small changes around her. Stores that should have existed looked different, people she knew behaved strangely, and even the weather seemed out of sync. It was as if her very presence there was already altering the course of time. But what truly frightened her was when she saw Ethan entering the cafe. He stared at her for a moment, as if he recognized her from somewhere, but quickly looked away. "I have to go," Ethan said abruptly, grabbing his clipboard and rushing out. Izzy tried to follow him, but Thomas held her arm. "Wait, who is that man? Why does he look so nervous?" Izzy hesitated. How could she explain everything to someone who didn't even know she was his daughter? Before she could respond, a deafening sound echoed through the streets. A car was speeding out of control, heading straight toward the cafe. It was the accident she had been trying to prevent. In a decisive instant, Izzy had to choose: save her father or protect Ethan, who was standing on the sidewalk, distracted by his papers. She ran towards Ethan, shoving him out of harm's way. The car grazed past them, but Thomas was still in danger. Heart pounding, she screamed for him to move. Then something unexpected happened. Thomas reacted quickly, jumping to the side and narrowly escaping the impact. The car crashed into a nearby storefront, but no one was hurt. Izzy breathed a sigh of relief, but she soon realized something was wrong. The timeline hologram on her Chronos device started flashing erratically, projecting images of a completely different future. In this new unfolding future, Ethan had become a renowned scientist, working directly for Novatech. And Thomas. Thomas had never died, but he also had never formed the emotional bond with Izzy that she had known. He was now a stranger to her. Izzy's eyes filled with tears as she watched her father walk down the street, without recognizing her. Changing the past can save lives, but at what cost? Izzy stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Her father was alive, but something fundamental between them had changed. He walked down the street as if she were just another stranger, and that shattered her inside. As she watched Thomas leave, Izzy felt an overwhelming weight on her shoulders. The weight of her choices. She had saved Ethan, but in doing so, she had profoundly altered her own timeline. Ethan, still confused by the recent events, approached her. "Who are you? How did you know about the accident?" His voice was firm, but there was a genuine curiosity in his tone. He had no idea who Izzy was, but something in his expression suggested he suspected she knew more than she was letting on. I just wanted to help," Izzy responded hesitantly. She knew she had to be careful with what she said. Revealing too much could create even more chaos in the fabric of time. As Ethan pressed her for answers, the hologram of the timeline continued flashing on her wrist. Fragmented images showed a dystopian future. Novatech had become a dominant corporation, controlling technological advancements that manipulated time on a global scale. Ethan appeared in these glimpses, leading secret projects for the company. It was clear that her actions in the present were shaping a dark future. Izzy realized that saving Ethan had been a mistake. By preventing his death at that moment, she had inadvertently set him on a path that would culminate in something much bigger and far more dangerous. But how could she fix it now? Going back in time again could cause even more damage. As Izzy struggled with her thoughts, Ethan began noticing strange patterns around him. He had always been an observant person, and the small inconsistencies in the environment caught his attention. People he knew seemed to be acting differently, and even the weather felt out of sync. Additionally, he had found notes on his clipboard that he didn't remember writing, including references to a temporal technology. "Hey, wait," Ethan said, grabbing Izzy's arm before she could walk away. "You know something about this?" He showed her one of the papers, where scribbled notes mentioned a Chronos device. "These notes, they're mine, but I don't remember writing them." Izzy hesitated but decided to trust him. "Listen, Ethan, I know this is going to sound insane, but I came from the future. And you are part of something much bigger than you realize." As Izzy explained her situation, Ethan began to connect the dots with what he had been investigating for years. During his research into Thomas's accident, he had stumbled upon theories about multiverses and alternate timelines. Stolen documents from Novatech suggested that the company had been experimenting with ways to manipulate time, creating parallel realities to explore different historical scenarios. So what you're saying is that there's more than one version of this reality? Ethan asked, fascinated. That every choice we make creates a new timeline? Exactly, Izzy replied. But the problem is, these timelines don't exist in isolation. They can collide, interfere with each other. And what we did today may have created a dangerous branch. Determined to understand the impact of their actions, Izzy and Ethan agreed to return to the present together. Using the Chronos device, Izzy adjusted the controls to bring them back to the current year. When they arrived, they were shocked by what they found. The city was unrecognizable. Futuristic buildings dominated the skyline, and autonomous drones patrolled the streets. A giant screen in the city center displayed a promotional video from Novatech, announcing its latest invention: global temporal control, shaping the future, preserving the past. Ethan immediately recognized the man in the video. It was him, decades older, presenting the technology he had developed for the company. This can't be happening, he murmured in disbelief. Izzy looked around, realizing that her very existence was now at risk. At some point in this new future, she had never been born. The emotional bond that had united her parents had been broken, and her entire life had been erased. As they walked through the transformed streets, Ethan and Izzy began discussing the philosophical implications of everything they had discovered. If we can change the past, does free will truly exist? Ethan questioned. Or are we all trapped in a cycle of cause and effect, unable to escape fate? I always thought we had choices, Izzy responded, her voice trembling. But now, I don't know anymore. Maybe some things are inevitable, like my father used to say. Maybe there are fixed points in time that cannot be changed, no matter what we do. Ethan shook his head. But if these fixed points exist, then does anything we do even matter? Are our choices irrelevant? At that moment, a Novatech security team appeared, searching for Ethan. They had recognized him as the scientist who had escaped from his own timeline. Now, he was considered a threat. Izzy and Ethan ran through the city streets as drones pursued them. As they ran through the futuristic streets, Izzy and Ethan could barely process the magnitude of what was happening. The city around them felt like a distorted reflection of their past choices. A collage of unforeseen consequences and intertwined alternate futures. The drone's lights sliced through the night sky like knives, casting long shadows over the two fugitives as they hid in dark alleys. We can't keep running forever, Ethan said, panting, leaning against a cold metallic wall. We need to understand how to fix this. Izzy looked at him, her eyes reflecting the pulsing sirens in the distance. You're right, but to fix it, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to figure out where everything started to go wrong. Ethan frowned, trying to connect the pieces of the puzzle. He had read about the theory of fixed points in time during his previous research, but he had never imagined it could be so literal. If there are fixed points, then maybe there's something in the past that cannot be changed. Something inevitable. Like my father's accident, Izzy murmured, pain in her voice. Maybe I tried to change something that simply wasn't meant to be changed. But Ethan shook his head, thoughtful. Or maybe the real fixed point is you. Maybe your existence is an essential part of this timeline, and any change you make ends up creating an even greater paradox. This idea unsettled Izzy. She had always believed she had control over her destiny, but now she was beginning to question how much her choices truly mattered. What if she was just a piece on a much larger board, moved by forces she couldn't even understand? Determined to find answers, Izzy and Ethan decided to infiltrate Novatech's headquarters. Using information Ethan had gathered in his original timeline, they managed to access an underground lab where temporal experiments were being conducted. When they entered, they were stunned by what they saw. Walls lined with monitors displayed alternate timelines, each showing different versions of the same event. In one, Thomas Carter died in the accident as he was supposed to. In another, he survived, but Izzy was never born. And in a third, Ethan led a revolution against Novatech, resulting in a utopian future. At the center of the lab stood a colossal machine, an advanced version of Kronos. It was surrounded by scientists in white uniforms, all frantically working to adjust complex calculations. One of them, an older man with graying hair and round glasses, caught Ethan's attention. "Professor Adler?" Ethan asked, incredulous. "What are you doing here?" The professor, a mentor to Ethan in his youth, slowly turned around. His eyes were tired, but there was a glimmer of recognition in them. "Ethan, I knew you'd show up eventually." Adler explained that Novitek had discovered a way to manipulate time, but that this technology came with a price. Every change to the past created new branches, some of which were unstable and threatened to collapse all timelines. To prevent this, the company was trying to identify the fixed points, crucial events that kept the fabric of time intact. "And what happens if someone interferes with one of those points?" Izzy asked, fearing the answer. "Reality collapses," Adler responded gravely. "All possible futures disappear, and time simply stops." Ethan looked at Izzy, finally understanding the weight of their actions. "So what do we do now? How do we fix this?" Adler hesitated before answering. "There is a way, but it will be painful." The plan was risky. Izzy had to return to the exact moment of the accident and allow it to happen. This would restore the original timeline, eliminating the unstable branches created by her previous interventions. However, it also meant that she would never get the chance to know her father as an adult. He would remain dead, and she would go back to being the girl who grew up without him. "I can't ask you to do this," Ethan said, sorrowful. "But if we don't, all possible futures will be lost." Tears streamed down Izzy's face as she looked at the hologram of the timeline. She saw flashes of moments she had never lived. A life where she had grown up with her father, but where Ethan had been erased from existence. She knew there was no choice. Some things were inevitable. "I'll do it," she said, determined. "But you have to promise me one thing." "Anything," Ethan replied. "Promise me you'll stop Novitek from continuing this. Promise me you'll make sure no one else tries to change the past." Ethan solemnly nodded. "I promise." The scene shifts to Izzy activating the Kronos machine once again, this time with a look of resignation on her face. She closes her eyes as the blue light envelops her, and the camera slowly pulls back, showing the lab fading into the background. A quiet stillness fills the air, as if time itself is holding its breath. A thought crosses her mind. Sometimes, the greatest act of freedom is accepting what we cannot change. When Izzy opened her eyes again, she was back in the attic where it had all begun. The Kronos machine was turned off, its panels dark and silent. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what she had done, or rather, what she had undone. The past was restored, but something inside her felt different. It wasn't just the absence of her father. It was as if a part of her had been rewritten as well. She walked to the window, watching the city lights outside. Everything looked exactly the same, but she knew it wasn't. The choices she had made echoed somewhere beyond her perception, shaping realities she would never see. Meanwhile, Ethan remained in the altered present, now fully aware of the ramifications of what they had done. He had kept his promise and destroyed Novitek's data on temporal manipulation. But that didn't mean the world was free from future temptations. In his mind, he kept questioning. Did time truly need to be protected? Or did humanity have the right to explore its possibilities, even at the risk of catastrophe? He returned to the attic's improvised lab, hoping to find Izzy. But when he arrived, all he found was a letter left behind. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I succeeded. Thank you for helping me understand that some things are inevitable. But I want you to know this is not the final word. Maybe time is not something we should control, but we also can't simply ignore it. Keep asking questions, keep searching for answers. Just don't make the same mistakes we did. Ned May. Izzy. Nandimol." Ethan held the letter for a long moment, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. He wanted to believe the future could be better, but he knew the thin line between freedom and fate was still an unsolved mystery. In the following months, Ethan dedicated his life to studying causality and the impact of human choices on the flow of time. He wrote a book titled The River and Its Banks, exploring the ideas he had discussed with Izzy during their adventures. The book became a global phenomenon, raising philosophical questions that challenged scientists, philosophers, and even theologians. At the end of an interview, Ethan received an anonymous letter. Inside, there was only a single handwritten phrase. "The river always finds its way." He recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Izzy's. And for the first time in months, he smiled. Maybe time wasn't something they could change. But maybe it was something they could learn to accept.